Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the 2021 Pittsburgh TechFest. So we're super happy to have you all with us today. Thank you for joining. During today's presentation, if you do have any questions, please enter it into the chat box that should be located in your dashboard. So we'll take questions at the end of the presentation. And I'm very pleased to welcome Brendan Connelly and Lise Bilhaut from Niche today. So Brendan, take it away.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining our talk and coming to listen today. My name is Brendan. I'll be presenting with my colleague Lise, and our presentation today is called Making Finding Where You Belong Easy for Everyone, Our Accessibility Journey. And so today we're going to be talking about our experience at Niche with accessibility and overhauling our entire platform in order for it to be accessible. And we are hoping to be able to share some insight from our experiences, as well as ideas and tips on how your company can adopt accessibility as well. So Lise, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, so just a little overview of our presentation today. We're going to explain what is Niche, what is accessibility, especially in terms of kind of tech and web accessibility. We're going to talk about our experience with accessibility at Niche specifically and the processes that we used in order to overhaul our website, as well as talk about how you guys can incorporate it into your company as well. Yeah, next slide. Okay, yeah, so what is Niche? What do we do? So Niche is a online platform that helps people find where they belong. That's kind of our big idea and motto, is helping people find where they belong in terms of schools, whether it be K-12, college, or graduate schools. And we do that by providing rankings and reviews in order to help our users be well informed about some of their biggest life decisions. You know, finding a school and finding a college is not an easy task. It can be very overwhelming, and we try to centralize that information for people in order to, be confident and make these well-informed decisions. Our mission, we really try to kind of go by these in our product, is to make researching and enrolling in schools easy, transparent, and free. So we want to make it as easy as possible. We want to make it transparent. We're not allowing schools to give us, inflated information or whatnot. We fact check, we make sure that we're providing clear and realistic data, as well as we want it to be free. Personal note, I used this about 7 years ago to help me find my college. And it was very helpful in that process. So, as a user as well as an employee, I can, kind of speak to its value. So, our topic today is accessibility, something that me and Lise have worked on for the past almost 10 months, specifically in a project for about 7 months. It's a topic that's been increasingly been more popular and prevalent in tech in the past few years, as companies begin to adopt more and more, as well as kind of as evident from the pandemic, as digital services are becoming more and more, standard in our life. And so accessibility, accessibility by definition is ensuring that something, whether it be a building, a website, a car, any type of thing, is able to be accessed by any person, regardless of what any limitations that they may be. Basically, every person in the world deserves to have the same basic, same basic rights, same basic opportunities, and nobody should be discriminated or limited by anything. And so in tech specifically, what we're referring to is web accessibility. And that's, that means making websites or tools or apps on your mobile phone, any type of digital service to be able to be accessed by anybody, whether they may be visually impaired, whether they might have some cognitive delays, motor issues. It really, it's to ensure that every single person has the exact same experience. And one of the good things that has come out of the pandemic is that pandemic, not being able to go out, not being able to interact in person, and having to rely on technologies. This has really brought web accessibility to the forefront and brought it into the light, because our entire world has now become dependent on technology and digital services. Kind of evident in having to do a virtual conference. Most of the meetings have gone to Zoom or Google Meets, and it's just, this is increasingly going to be a bigger and bigger topic in tech that is just becoming the standard. And so, why should anybody create accessible websites or products? There's a number of reasons. Obviously, you want to make a website inclusive and usable for every single user. If you're building a website, you want to make sure that every person can use it. That's, you want to try to build as much market share as possible, and you don't, obviously ethically, you want to ensure that every person has the same opportunities, but it just doesn't make, business sense to make a product and specifically not make it accessible for every person. Besides that point, these other points are actually a lot of business cases that are, kind of strengthen the reason to make accessible products. Improved SEO. A lot of the standards in web accessibility actually improve your SEO, such as, ensuring there's only one H1 title, ensuring that there's proper heading structures, and ensuring that, words and descriptions are clear, as well as, having your HTML elements having ARIA attributes, which are kind of what makes screen readers be able to read websites. Having that kind of redundant information on there in terms of creating, allowing screen readers to be able to read it is, helps improve your SEO, because you have more words and keywords to be able to tag onto, as well as, search engines are actually now starting to look at usability and accessibility scores of websites, and are starting to incorporate those scores into your SEO, presence. So that is also becoming a more popular topic that is kind of driving accessibility. Another big thing is sales for public clients. At Niche, a lot of our clients are public universities, and public entities are not allowed to use public funding for products or services that are not accessible, that don't meet ADA requirements, because just simply because that has become the law. Kind of touch into that on the next point. So another reason is to minimize legal risks. So web accessibility is now actually a very large key component to Americans with Disabilities Act. In 2019, Domino's was sued because their website was not accessible for a blind user. A user could not order a pizza, and he sued them because that was violating his rights. He was not able to do a basic thing that most of the public can do. And as a result of that, that case went to the Supreme Court, and the precedent has been set that requires all digital products and websites and services to be accessible. And if a website is not accessible, then they are potentially opening themselves up to a lawsuit. And so that is another reason to make your websites accessible. And so kind of a big thing. Obviously, there's reasons why you want to create accessible website, but the next step after wanting to do that is figuring out how to do that. It can be really difficult, overwhelming, kind of a very daunting task to begin with, because it's just slowly becoming more popular and prevalent. And so thankfully, the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium, they kind of set the standards for the internet and a lot of different protocols. They're responsible for setting the standard for web accessibility. And they created Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, better known as WCAG, which are guidelines into how developers and companies are able to create websites. They create standards for a wide variety of different functions and different impairments, as well as these guidelines really guide a developer into how to develop for it. Because that's a lot of the times the biggest issue is that developers don't exactly know how to implement something. They know what they're supposed to do, but it can be difficult actually reaching that solution. And so these guidelines cover larger screen reader type issues, keyboard only, so navigating with just a keyboard, and colorblind users. So, ensuring that color contrast matches, is able to be used for all users. So here is a really good graphic from Microsoft, from their inclusive design kind of toolkit that they provide. Something that's really cool with accessibility is oftentimes when you develop for permanent disabilities, you're also creating opportunities and the accessibility for anybody with temporary or situational disabilities. Just by looking at this diagram, you can see in the second row, if you're developing a website for somebody that is permanently blind, and that's one of your main user stories, then you're also allowing a user that has temporary eye impairment from cataract surgery or any other type of eye surgery that is not able to see temporarily, you're opening your website to be able to be accessed and functioned by those users as well. And so it's, a lot of times it can be a little overwhelming because, you want to make sure every type of user is able to be, developed for and accounted for. But this kind of can help show that, if you focus on, on one set, there's cascading effects that can help benefit other people as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna take over and I'm gonna start our experience. I'm gonna share our experience with accessibility at Niche. First, I want to say that accessibility is always a work in progress. And this is how it looked for us, and maybe for your company, it's gonna look different. What started our initiative was that, as Brendan said, we had public client that require us to be accessible. So we started by doing an initial audit that we did internally. And then we spent months doing the remediation work. Then we did a second audit by an external company. And what we are doing now is triaging the remaining issues into different product teams, as well as integrating accessibility into our company culture. So first, our initial audit, it was just a spreadsheet, but it was like a big spreadsheet and a lot of people contributed to it. So we had 3 types of tab. The first one was our product breakdown. I'm going to show you. So this is what it looked like. We had URLs because we are a website, so our main products is on URLs. We had project ID, the impact. I'm going to speak about that later. The effort level, and you can add on this type of a spreadsheet, some time boxing or goal setting. So it's very nice for project management as well. Then we had a second tab, which was a matrix between the WCAG criteria that we wanted to meet and our product. So I'm gonna show you. So this is how it looked like. We had a lot of criteria here. So we concentrated on level A and double A. And when we started working on it, everything was empty. And bit by bit, everything turned green, which was very nice to see. And the last type of tabs was the results for each product family. So we had 52 URLs on the 54 WCAG criteria. So that was more than 2,800 checks. That was a lot. And yeah, it took us maybe a month with a lot of people involved. So this is what the results look like. So we would put the affected element, the criteria that it was failing, the person who found it, the severity, was it minor, critical, moderate, the confidence that we had in our assessment, because sometimes like, you're not sure and it's open to discussion. If we use that tool to find this failure, was it on desktop, on mobile, on the URL? So we do have a lot of takeaways to share with you about this initial audit. The first one is that it's a good learning opportunity. So it's a good time for your team to learn about WCAG. So try to involve as much people as possible so everybody gets some training during this time. Something else to do is to include several screen reader technologies. So here is a graph shared by Web AIM, and they do a survey, I think every year or every 2 years. So this is the one of this year, and you can see that more than half of the people use JAWS. A big chunk of it use NVDA, and a little like less more use VoiceOver. So NVDA is a screen reader of Windows, and VoiceOver is a screen reader of Mac. And here, like it's a real demonstration of why it's good to have diversity into your company. So I'm a software engineer and I'm still on Windows. So maybe one day I'll switch to Linux. But because I was allowed to work on Windows, I was able to work with an NVDA screen reader and to fix the issues. Something else that you need to consider when you do an audit is the impact of the issues. So first, the impact in terms of liability. So for instance, your privacy policy, your disclaimers, you need to make sure that they are accessible. So as Brendan told you, there are laws around this. So you need to be very mindful of that. Your traffic as well. So make sure like you're like first looking at pages with the most traffic, but also the impact on your users. If you got like cool features, but they are behind a logging screen, you want to make sure that this logging screen is accessible. Something else to do is to synchronize your development database with your production database. We did the audit in production on niche.com. And then when we started the remediation, like we had some issues and extra work to do to reproduce some of the issue in development. But remember also to take into account edge cases. For instance, you might have pages with not a lot of traffic because you don't have any data on these pages. And the way we represent no data is with a dash. But NVDA screen reader, so the screen reader used by Windows, it doesn't pronounce the dash. So a screen reader user will just hear nothing and not understand what's going on. So we had to add an invisible text saying no data. And the last, like if you're working with a spreadsheet, like make sure you have a plan to synchronize the results of the spreadsheet with what you're using for project management. So next phase was the remediation process, and that was a long process. So it was over 30 persons months. We had a project manager, a designer, 2 front-end engineers, and a quality analyst, so Brendan and myself. So that was a lot of work, and that really showed the commitment that Niche had to make its website accessible. Something I want to share, if we have any developer that is listening to us, is a very useful tool called Focus Visible. So this is for keyboard interaction. And when you interact with, so it's for people who cannot use a mouse. And when they interact with a website with only keyboard, they need to know exactly where they are on the page. And this is done with a focus ring. And for us, we went with a black thick ring. And when it's dark, it's going to be white. But then when you use like the usual focus state, it's going to be visible if you use your mouse as well. And it's not something that is very nice for your user. So it's good to be able to differentiate the input. Either I'm like browsing with my keyboard or I'm browsing with my mouse. And there is a CSS pseudo class that can do that. It's called Focus Visible. It's not available on every browser. So you can use a NPM package called Focus Visible as well. That's gonna give you this technology. Something else to be mindful during the remediation process is to be aware of screen reader quirks, and which is why you need to have several screen reader technologies. So for instance, on niche, we're very mindful about grades. So this is what we do. And NVDA doesn't pronounce the minus sign. So a school with a grade A and a school with a grade A minus sounded the same for a screen reader user. And we had to fix for that. And, but VoiceOver, if you would have used only VoiceOver, we wouldn't have realized it was an issue. Then, so as Brendan said previously, there is a big overlap between accessibility and SEO. So when you're gonna work on your accessibility, you're gonna improve your SEO, which is always nice. Like you're gonna make sure you have page title, H1, the heading order is good, that you have meaningful links and images with alternate text. So everything that you're gonna make, you're gonna change to make your website more comprehensive for assistive technologies, it's gonna be used by crawling bots as well. And the last was everything that was centered around the design. Our designer had to work a lot to fix color contrast issues. And when you do that, it's not only about design, it's also about creative, about your brand. So you need to involve other teams as well. And just to give you an idea, like this is what niche.com looked like last year, and this is what it looks like now. It's way more accessible in terms of color contrast. And here, that was our main header like last year, and we had to switch color. And as Brendan was saying, like accessibility, like especially for color contrast, it's not only for permanent disability. I'm sure like all of us like have tried to go on our phone during a sunny day, and we can't make sense of what's happening in the screen because the color contrast is not high enough. So yeah, that was like an overview of what we worked on during the remediation.
Okay, yeah. So here, I apologize for the low quality GIF. GIFs don't always output videos in the best quality, but this is, so one of the main tools that we use in order to look at our accessibility violations and see, you know, when we're working on development, see where we've improved. And we initially use this for the audit. This tool is called Axe. It is a DevTools extension. It's created by DQ Systems that their whole business is accessibility. They create products and they offer accessibility consulting. But this tool specifically is Axe DevTools. This is something that you could download before the end of our presentation and start looking at your website. All you got to do is go to, you know, Chrome or Firefox web store, download the Axe extension and start using it. And this kind of just showing how quickly, you know, within 10, 20 seconds, you're able to analyze a page in order to see what violations are on the page, see how many are on the page, what specific selectors and elements are the, you know, offending parts of that website, as well as it also offers solutions to it at the bottom. It helps you solve it, as well as offers links to for more documentation and information on it. This is super useful, and it's really becoming the industry standard tool for companies and individuals that are wanting to analyze their accessibility. And within Axe, you know, there's a number of other tools. You know, there's obviously this browser extension, but there's also CI/CD tools. There's JavaScript automation libraries. There's a number of other tools that are provided by this same tool that you know, can offer a company to really create tools and testing and processes that account for accessibility. Okay, yeah, and so we want to talk a little bit about our second audit, because our first audit was internal, and for the second audit, we wanted to hire an external firm in order to really give us confidence, not only give us confidence in our remediation work, as well as in order to be able to get a mix of diverse and non-diverse users. So users that are permanently blind, and so they kind of users that use a screen reader on an everyday basis, as well as a non-blind user that uses a screen reader, and a few other types of different users, because we wanted to ensure that we were providing the highest quality solutions, as well as hiring external firms is really critical for generating a VPAT, which is necessary oftentimes for public clients. And it really helps if you have an external firm that can kind of give you a stamp of confidence. You're able to put a logo on your website that says, we've been audited, we've been, this company has said that we're in compliance. Kind of just helps give that extra layer of confidence to clients. And then another tool that that we have come across is a Pally dashboard. This is an open source tool, completely free. It is a monitoring dashboard for accessibility. So on the left, you can see you can create a dashboard in these tiles, and each of these tiles contains a different page that you want to monitor. So most likely going to use your highest traffic, most important pages that you want to ensure high quality accessibility in. And you're able to see at a high level number of critical errors, number of just warnings and notices, as well as kind of the last time that this was analyzed. But if you click on the card and you kind of drill down into it, you can see on the right side that it offers more granular details about that actual web page. You're able to see a graph that plots your past data points, and so you're able to see kind of the movement and progress and trends of that page, as well as on the bottom, you're able to see the actual specific violations that are in violation, the selectors, and it offers details if you click into it, like solutions and links out to other documentations. This uses a little different accessibility engine than Axe, and which is kind of nice because it kind of helps you provide more confidence by using two different tools. And so, yeah, following the, following auditing, following remediation work, it's really important to also try to keep the momentum going. You don't want to just do all this work, remediate your website, and then just kind of stop there. Accessibility is a long-term ongoing thing. It's not just a one-time thing. So following the external audit, we broke the issues down, as Lise had mentioned earlier, by product teams in their focus areas in order to, one, be able to distribute the remaining work, as well as to help build knowledge across different teams. We also have an Ally Slack channel. It's probably a good time to mention. So Ally is a very commonly used acronym in tech for accessibility. The 11 in it is oftentimes pronounced Ally, but the 11 stands for the 11 letters in between the A and the Y of accessibility. So if you see that, just know that that means accessibility. And so we created a Slack channel that's kind of becoming, kind of centralizing discussions and knowledge and articles that people find. Kind of seen on the right, these are just a few kind of examples of things that have been sent in our Slack channels about different, things that people have found, or different things that people have learned just by working with these kind of topics and implementing solutions. And one of the biggest things with accessibility is it's a conversation. It's not just it requires discussions and topics, and it's not just a straightforward, oftentimes it's not just a straightforward one type of solution. It requires creativity and kind of different opinions and perspectives.
Okay, sorry. So in the second part of this presentation, we want to share with you some ideas and suggestions on how you can incorporate accessibility at your company. So before you start working on accessibility, you need to understand that each company is unique, and you need to understand your playing field. If you're in a highly regulated industry like healthcare or banking, it's not going to be the same as if you are in a fast-moving startup, if you are in a mature company, if you're planning on going public or not. And something that is key is to go to your legal team and to understand their requirements and their priorities. Maybe for them, like the career page of your website is super important to be accessible. Try to involve stakeholders up to the highest level, so to the CEO, CPO, CTO, and communicate with them on the work you're doing on accessibility. So for niche, you've seen it was like a lot of person months. So it was a lot of money and resources poured into this initiative. And then something to do is to provide alternative access during remediation. If you know that your website is not accessible, provide to your user like a phone number so they can call and they can have people reading the website to them. And here I've put a few images of accessibility fail in real life. So that's one, it's not too obvious, but you've got like restroom written in Braille, but they put a piece of glass above it. So like it's not readable for a Braille reader. And like those images like look funny to us, but when you go online with a screen reader, you keep like bumping into this type of issues. So we as a community, we should really like do better to make the digital world not as ridiculous as like this is on this picture. So and again, like we can't stress it enough, like care before the lawyers show up. Here I've put an article, so it was last year, and actually a lot of companies sued over lack of accessibility are small and medium businesses. So like it's an important matter. And then the big question is, how do we keep the momentum? Because when you start speaking about accessibility and raising awareness about it, you need to keep this momentum and to incorporate it into your company culture. And an initial audit, it's a very good stepping stone. It was for us, and I know it was for other companies. But also, like as a stone, it's a stone who got like mass and speed, and like you need to keep the momentum like once you've done it. So the next part of this presentation is how do we keep this momentum going? And for that, there are 4 big pieces. The first one is teamwork, then automation, training, and culture. So accessibility is a team sport. Here I've put like a product team. So you've got like a scrum master, product owner, designers, developers, quality analysts, and up to the production. But I should have added the club owner to the picture, because they are the one like prioritizing resources. So you need to have them on board as well. And here is a few suggestions related to each role in a product team. So for the product owners or the scrum master, make sure that you build acceptance criteria around accessibility and account for it in the development time. It takes more time when you build a new feature to make sure that it's keyboard and the screen reader accessible. So remember that and increase the length of your project a little bit. Something that you can do is to be like very systematic about accessibility and treat the lack of accessibility as if your website were done. Because actually for some users, it is done. If you work on big projects, you can include multiple accessibility reviews. It's not something that you do at the end. It's something you should put regular checks on. When you work on user testing, make sure you include diversity as well, and you think about intersectionality. Something that can be fun to do is to assign each of your team members a personas, so with a particular type of disability, and make them advocate for this type of disability. And the last point, again, is to work with your SEO team, because you're going to have overlap. And both for accessibility and SEO, it's important to have like good, solid content. So then we've got the designer. So designers are mainly concerned with color contrast issues, and when they do a bit of coding with HTML as well. Then it's developers. So developers, it's going to be good HTML, keyboard interaction, screen reader interactions. And if you're in a company big enough to have or to build a design system, make sure that your each brick is accessible, while remembering that it's not because you've got accessible brick that the house you're going to build is accessible. So you need to think on a system level as well. The next point is accessibility should be built in the foundation. So a good example of that is if you develop a feature that allows some users to upload images, and these images are going to be seen by other users, you want to make sure you provide a way of inputting alternative text so you can use them afterwards to describe the images to screen reader users. And then for a quality analyst, so you need, like, we're going back to this acceptance criteria, because at the end of the day, like if accessibility is in the acceptance criteria, the standards are going to be met. Then we can use automatic tools, and I'm going to speak about that later. But keep in mind that automation is limited, and there is always a need for manual testing. And then the last part is about production and deployment. Nowadays, we have tools that we can incorporate into the deployment pipeline to check for accessibility. So try to make use of that too. So speaking of automation, if we are here today at Pittsburgh TechFest, I'm guessing that we love technology, we love machine, maybe we're a bit lazy and we want to let the machine like work for us. And in accessibility, the machine can do some work. So I know like some big companies got libraries for acceptance criteria, and they can automate accessibility like when they pick their acceptance criteria. Make use of browsers extensions. So Brendan showed you how we use Axe. You have other extensions as well. You have Web, Site Improve. So just like try them out and pick the one that works the best for you. You can even, like when you write code, you can check, like in some instance, you can even check for color contrast inside the code. And make sure you put automation into your development workflow. So make use of linters. There are several out there. And you can incorporate accessibility automation into your source control program. So for instance, on GitHub, there is a tool, it's called AccessLint. When you open up here, you push some code, you're gonna have automatic accessibility check. And last, you have also a tool, so this one is developed by DQ, that integrate accessibility checks with like what you use for automatic end-to-end testing, like Playwright. But keep in mind that automation's got its limits. So on depending like of the person you're gonna ask to, they're gonna tell you it catches like 30 to 50% of accessibility issue. And there is like a guy here, Manuel Matuzovic, who like design like the perfect accessible website for a bot, but not for a real life user. So limit of automation are consistent and predictable focus rings. So especially like when you use the strategies that we use at Niche with a focus visible. useful descriptions on active elements, on good labeling. And maybe one day we'll got like artificial intelligence helping us with that. But for now, we still need a human being. Same with ARIA Live announcements and animation and reduced motion. So always plan for a manual testing, and it should be integrated into your process. So the next slide is about regression. So as a developer, I'm like scared of regression and even more scared for accessibility, because you can do a lot of work on accessibility, and then even you or another person is gonna push some code and like destroy some stuff you made. So always be very mindful of regression. And I put this slide into the automation part because automation is gonna help you with regression. And I know like some companies are very strict about that, and you cannot push and deploy some code if you're like the automation tool realize you've introduced more accessibility failures than what you fixed. Okay, so the next big piece is training. So when you start working on accessibility, you need to build expertise in the company. You need to make sure that everybody understands that it's part of their job to build accessibility, accessible features. But for that, you need also to offer your team training on core fundamentals. So make sure like you teach everyone how to augment their skills with accessibility. You can deliver knowledge in small chunks rather than all together because it's easier to absorb. You can like have tool like a matrix with a role, like each roles and what tools they're supposed to use. And something that is good for your employees' growth is to offer professional certifications around accessibility. So as Brandon mentioned, like we have a group dedicated to accessibility, so our Slack channel. And something else you can do is to have accessibility champions and subject matter experts with office hour in your company, especially when you start, but always with a coach mindset. Like you don't want accessibility to be a niche occupation. You want like everybody to contribute to it. And something that I think it's good, but for bigger companies, it's to create an accessibility champion program. This is what they do at Intuit, the company that does TurboTax. They have like 3 levels of in the program. And the first one is very low barrier to entry. Like people have to watch a few videos, join the Slack channel, make a statement, install a browser, an extension in their browser and use it. So I think it's an interesting suggestion. And I've put like 2 links here with more information about this type of program. And then, so if your company is just starting with accessibility, make sure that you are proactive. First, you need to assess where your teams stand on accessibility, because it's gonna allow you to track progress and to target training. So we've done a small survey in our front-end team, and I was asking, like, do you check color contrast ratio? Do you check for keyboard, for screen reader? And here we had a lot. So that was 5 months ago. We had a lot of blue, like people like never doing that. And I can tell you like now, 5 months afterwards, people know how to use the tools, and they like everything moved to the right, and people are way better at thinking and knowing how to solve for accessibility. The next point is how to address resistance. So prepare talking points. Make sure like if people tell you, oh, we don't have time or it's not important, make sure that you know how to answer those. Play to people's strength. If you have like someone who loves JavaScript, like make them work on keyboard interaction. Refer to the company code of ethics and make it personal. And this is ties to how to incorporate accessibility into the company culture. And then you can go like from reactive to proactive, and you have tools to do that. Like you can do kickoff meeting, you can do workshops, you can change your definition of done. A feature is not done if it's not accessible. And you can make like the strong decision of not pushing or publishing any new code that generates more accessibility failures than it fixes. So the last point is about company culture. First, you need to decide of a level of compliance, and usually company goes for a level AA because it's gonna protect you against lawsuits. And if you work with external vendor, make sure that in your contract you incorporate accessibility. Remember that the invisible content, like the alt text, the ARIA announcements, are all part of your brand voice. And document your team's accessibility work. So you need to demonstrate that you're doing a good faith effort in terms of accessibility. You need to save the institutional knowledge. We're in an industry with a high turnover, so you need to make sure like everything is documented, so you keep the knowledge in-house, and try to be as transparent as possible. So try to publish blog posts about it. And something good that comes with it is that you'll get more understanding from the community. Here are a few tools that you can use. So create a prioritization strategy. And the main question for that is a product available to customer? Because if it's not, like if it's impossible to use, it should be a P1 and it should be fast tracked. If it's a problem, but there is a workaround like a P2, if it's tedious, a P3, if it's a non-barrier, like it's gonna be the lowest. And schedule regular audits. So on the frequency, so here is just like an example of how you can think about it. The frequency should depend on the current accessibility compliance that you have and the accessibility control that you have in place. So if you know that you are like very compliant and you have good control in place, you can like lower the frequency of the audit. But if you know like you're not at all compliant and deficient, make sure like every month you're checking your code and to see if things were fixed. Then you can incorporate accessibility into your accountability mechanism, into your OKRs, into your performance reviews. Something that it's nice to do to bring the company together is to have an annual state of accessibility at your company. And a good day for that is a Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is like every year in May. You can even have Accessibility Champion Award. And remember, accessibility can't speak for itself. So you need to have people in the room caring about accessibility when strategy and priorities are fixed. And speaking of people, what makes a company culture, a lot of it, it's employees. So make sure that you incorporate accessibility into your onboarding process. Just like you have like coded guidelines, good practices, make sure you speak about accessibility. Provide easy access to on-demand training on the subject matter experts and show how it's tied to your company core values and strategy. And for us at Niche, it's very easy because like we want to make the process of researching and applying to school easy and equitable for all students and parents. So it's really built in our mission. And if it's not in your mission, it's probably in your core values. You probably have values around diversity and inclusion, and the accessibility is part of that. And the last point is build empathy. So have a native screen reader user come and use your product in front of your product team. And that really is key to drive the change and to make people click, oh, like it's something very important. You can try to organize an empathy exercise and make it a game, like just like put your team in front of your website with only a keyboard, and the first one that can find like whatever information wins a prize. Do customer outreach on a regular basis, and so invite feedback from your users. So now on niche.com, we have a linked web accessibility with an email address, and people can reach out to us if they have any question about accessibility. You can work with your employee resource groups as well and hire people with disabilities. not because to work on accessibility, but because they are part of society, they are part of the business world, and they should be more visible than they are now. Okay, so now is the conclusion. So yeah, accessibility is never something that is like a one and done. Like, expect changes. You're gonna have changes in a WCAG criteria. You're gonna have changes in browsers, in assistive technologies, and in the tools that you can use to help you with accessibility. Remember that it's not a feature, it's really a foundation. And remember, like the 4 pieces, like it's a team sport. You need automation, you need training, and you need to have a way to incorporate it into your company culture. Because it's not like an issue to solve for, it's like really a culture change to make. Okay, so this is the last slide. So niche is hiring. We've got a lot of jobs opening now. We have like very good benefits. We have like a great mission and the amazing people that we work with every day. So if you're interested in joining the company, check out our jobs opening, and you can reach out to Brendan and myself on LinkedIn as well. Thank you for listening, and yeah, thank you for caring about accessibility.
Thank you so much. So if anyone has any questions, please enter them now into the chat. So there was one question that was asked, but I think you pretty much answered it. It was about a checklist or tools about automated checklist for checking accessibility in desktop applications. But do you have any other comments?
No, I think like for us, we love Axe, but you've got other ones that have like different features, like waves, and the site improves are good as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions, so I guess we can end a couple minutes early. So we'll have some networking coming up at 10 o'clock. So here's the link. You can access that at 10 o'clock, and at 11 o'clock, we'll be back with the breakout sessions. So you'll be able to select one of 3 at 11 o'clock, and then we'll conclude at 12. So thank you to everyone who attended today, and thank you to Niche. Great presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.